Okay, well, let's start. Let's do this for the pure motivation of leading all limitless Mother and Father sentient beings to the ultimate. So today we're going to do a Vajrayana text called the Song of Mahamudra by Tilopa. Tilopa lived a little over 1,000 years ago and is considered one of the great Mahasiddhas. And he's also the founder of our lineage. And he received teaching from many, many great masters in India at the time. But he also received a direct transmission from Buddha Vajradhara. I think that was about Mahamudra. And he practiced all these things and mastered them. Sometime later, there came along someone named Naropa, who was a great debater at Namdak University. That's about 1,000 years ago. And no one could defeat Naropa in debate at Nalanda. And he acquired quite a reputation as an expert in Dharma. And then one day he had a meeting with what turned out to be a Dakini. I think it was in a dream, but I could be wrong, where he was asked if he understood the teachings. And he said yes. And the Dakini asked him, do you understand just the words, or do you understand the real meaning behind it? And he lied and said that he understood the real meaning behind it, whereupon she reacted in a certain way. And not very nice. And she mentioned that the only one around who really understood the meaning behind the words was her brother Naropa. And when Naropa heard the word Tsultrim, he had a great uprising of devotion and decided that he would leave his position at Namdak and go looking for Lopa. And he had many, many difficulties both before and after he met Tilopa. One story that I heard was at one point he and Tilopa were at the top of a cliff, and Tilopa said to him, if I had a real disciple and I told him to jump off, he would jump immediately, whereupon Naropa immediately jumped off the cliff and broke all his bones. And but Tilopa healed him and taught him. So this is the Song of Mahamudra is Tilopa's teaching on Mahamudra to Naropa. And this is very, very foundational in Vajrayana Buddhism and especially in the Karmakaju lineage. So let's get started on it. The Song of Mudra by Tilopa. Mahamudra is beyond all words and symbols, but for you, Naropa, earnest and loyal, must this be said. So a lot of people, when they hear that Mahamudra is beyond all words and symbols, they sort of brush that aside, and then they want to hear the words. It's very easy to make a mistake when receiving teaching on Mahamudra. There's a teaching that I heard once about some great master was pointing out some Dharma, and he noticed that the students were not really looking where he was pointing, and he said, don't look at my finger, look where I'm pointing. And so you should regard the words that are about to be said as a finger pointing at a deeper truth. And it's that truth you should focus on, not so much on the words. In almost every other area of Buddhism and almost every other area of life, you can acquire knowledge, but you can't really acquire knowledge about Mahamudra. Or, everything that can be said about it is pretty much completely wrong. But it does point at the deeper truth. So Mahamudra is beyond words and symbols, but for you, Naropa, earnest and loyal, must this be said. The void needs no reliance. Mahamudra rests on naught. So in this translation, the void is what's used to mean ultimate reality. It's also synonymous with the reality of Mahamudra. The void needs no reliance. Mahamudra rests on naught. So everything in conditioned existence generally rests on something else or relies on something else. Mahamudra, or ultimate reality, doesn't rely or depend on anything else. There's no foundation for it. It just, well, you can say it just is, but that's not quite right either. It neither is nor is not. But the void needs no reliance. Mahamudra rests on naught. Without making an effort, but remaining natural, one can break the yoke, thus gaining liberation. So Mahamudra is different from all other practices in that it basically is the absence of activity. In every other teaching in Buddhism, there's something to do. But in Mahamudra, the practice is to recognize natural mind and then do nothing, just rest in it. So on the Saturday talks, when someone who's practicing Mahamudra comes up, my teaching over and over and over again is they tell me what they're doing and I tell them don't do that. But if you take that advice and try to apply it to other aspects of Buddhism or other aspects of anything, it doesn't apply. So if you're doing any Buddhist practice where the instruction is do this, then do that and don't mix in the Mahamudra instruction of doing nothing. One person I knew was at the Dharma Center of Canada near Kinmount, and a Tibetan teacher arrived, and just before a retreat on Mahamudra, and my friend went to the teacher and said, "What is it you're going to teach?" And he said, "I'm going to teach you how to do nothing." And so my friend went away and said, "Oh, I can do that already." So he left and didn't attend the teaching. So whether he could do nothing in the Mahamudra sense of the word, I don't know. But so all teachings about Mahamudra should not be mixed with any other teachings of any other practice or any other teaching at all. Without making an effort. So one time I was with Mingyur Rinpoche, and he did a sort of a guided meditation where he told us to relax. And he guided us through a sort of a progressive relaxation. And then after it was over, he said, "So was your experience doing that better than your meditative experience, or the same as your meditative experience, or not as good as your meditative experience?" I, of course, got the question wrong because my meditative experience at that particular time was really good. So I said, no, my meditative experience is better. But he said, relaxation is meditation. And that's particularly true in Mahamudra. Without making an effort, but remaining natural, one can break the yoke, thus gaining liberation. If one looks for naught when staring into space, if with the mind one then observes the mind, one destroys distinctions and reaches Buddhahood. So normally, if we try to see our mind, we don't see our mind. We see the things that are happening in the mind, like thoughts and emotions and memories and all of those things. And so we can't really see the mind. It's like trying to look at a diamond through a colored filter. What you do is you see the color, but you can't really see the essence of the crystal pure diamond. Uh, so, so the practice of Mahamudra uh, leads you to the place where the mind becomes completely still. And then at that point, you can see the mind. And if with that mind you then observe the mind, that's what leads to liberation. That's the path of liberation in Mahamudra. If one looks for naught when staring into space, if with the mind one then observes the mind, one destroys distinctions and reaches Buddhahood. One destroys distinctions and reaches Buddhahood. The goal of Mahamudra is Buddhahood. It's not the Arhat level of enlightenment. It's full Buddhahood, knowing everything, having completely arrived to the very highest. If with the mind one then observes the mind, one destroys distinctions and reaches Buddhahood. So up to now, we're still on the first page. He has pretty much explained Mahamudra completely. Now he starts going through things in a little more detail. The clouds that wander through the sky have no roots, no home, nor do the distinctive thoughts floating through the mind. So in Mahamudra, you don't control your thoughts at all. You let them arise and fall as they will. And gradually they settle down. And they use the metaphor of the sky and clouds. The sky remains the same whether there are clouds or not. And if clouds move through the sky, it doesn't change the sky at all. Similarly, when thoughts move through your mind, they really have nothing to do with you, and they don't affect the nature of mind at all. So you simply rest and let thoughts rise and fall as they will. The clouds that wander through the sky have no roots, no home, nor do the distinctive thoughts floating through the mind. if you're able to let thoughts just come and go, then they become their own responsibility. They have nothing to do with you. They come and go as they want. You're not in any hurry to have them stop. You don't care whether they're there or whether they're not there. You just rest in awareness, and thoughts arise and fall. And that creates um, uh, detachment from the thoughts. The thoughts are seen as something that has nothing to do with you. They come and go as they want. You don't have to do anything about them. They have nothing to do with you. And that creates the detachment from the thoughts that is so necessary for complete progress in Mahamudra. Once the self-mind is seen, discrimination stops. Once the self-mind is seen, discrimination stops. Discrimination can be, in this context, to be another way of saying creating duality stops. Discrimination is discrimination between two things. So you have self and other, you have the various objects that are separate from each other, the various beings that are separate from each other. That's what discrimination is. And when we discriminate, we create duality. Once you see the mind, once the mind settles down so that it can be seen, creating duality stops. In other words, you relax into oneness. Does that make sense to anybody? Yeah. Yeah. In space, shapes and colors form, but neither by black nor white is space tinged. From the self-mind, all things emerge. The mind, by virtues and vices, is not stained. So, in Buddhism, there's the fundamental view that all beings have Buddha nature. Buddha nature can be considered synonymous with ultimate reality. You relax into ultimate reality, and in ultimate reality, um, uh, virtues and vices don't exist. Ultimate reality is pure from the beginning. It's been there forever. It will be there forever. And just like he says, in space, shapes and colors form, but neither by black nor white is space tinged. From the self-mind, all things emerge. The mind, by virtues and vices, is not stained. So we've been talking about this in the other series of teachings lately, how the reality that you perceive is really a projection of your own mind. And we create with our mind this illusory reality that we take as real. We've been talking about this quite a bit in the Saturday teachings. All of the reality that we perceive is apparent reality. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about ultimate reality. And ultimate reality has been pure from the beginning. It's not stained by virtues and vices or anything else. And it's not changed by anything. And it will be here basically forever. So there's so one time I received teaching on an ancient Hindu teaching, and in that teaching, you had to do something to fix every single negative action you had ever done. And I didn't get the complete teaching on it. I don't really understand how it works, but this is the complete opposite of that. Every virtue and vice that you've ever had, you don't have to bother with them at all. They don't have any reality. They don't have any effect on your true nature. From the self-mind, all things emerge. The mind by virtues and vices is not stained. Therefore, you can just relax into reality. The darkness of ages cannot shroud the glowing sun. The long eons of samsara never can hide the mind's brilliant light. The mind doesn't have a brilliant light, that's just a metaphor. But if you had a space like a room or a cave or something that was dark for billions of eons, and you light a candle, instantly that darkness is gone. And so the metaphor is that uh, the moment your realization, let's use the metaphor lights up your mind, then the long eons of samsara just disappear. They don't count for anything. I'm not explaining that very well, but I hope you can get the point. Um, you light a candle and darkness, no matter how long it's been there, disappears. You awaken, and no matter how long your mind has been in samsara, all of that is gone, and you are just awake. Though words are spoken to explain the void as such can never be expressed. Though we say the mind is a bright light, it is beyond all words and symbols. Although the mind is void in essence, all things it embraces and contains. There was a great Zen master asked about the void one time, and he said, the most you can say about it is not two. There's not two things. It's just one. The words are spoken to explain the void as such can never be expressed. The Buddha said, words cannot express truth. That which words express is not truth. And it's good if you are considering Mahamudra to keep remembering that the void cannot be expressed in words or symbols. People tend to gloss over that part that we're talking about, and then think they have some understanding of the void. There's nothing that can be understood about it. And the human mind is uncomfortable with not understanding and labeling and pigeonholing everything. So If you think you know anything about ultimate reality, you're wrong. And get used to it. There isn't anything you can understand. There isn't anything you can know. There isn't anything you can say without deluding yourself. So when you realize ultimate reality, uh, then that need to understand disappears. Okay, now a little more specific instruction. Do not with the body, but relax. These are very complicated and sophisticated instructions. Don't do anything except relax. Shut firm the mouth and silent remain. I was with Namjo one time and he was talking about right speech, and he said, right speech, pardon me, it means shut up. So shut firm the mouth and silent remain. So this would be if you're doing Mahamudra as a retreat. Um, you know, you don't have to do anything with the body other than relax. You don't have to talk. You don't have to speak. You can remain silent. Empty your mind and think of naught. Empty your mind and think of naught. So a few weeks ago, we talked about this in the Saturday teachings. One time I was with Namjo Rinpoche, and my mind was pretty active, one thought after another and stuff like that. And he said, you need to stop your thoughts. Sometimes all you need to do is to say no. And that was the first time I had heard that it's possible to do something to stop your thoughts. My thought before that was that, you know, you watch the thoughts and gradually there will be less and less of them, and eventually your mind will be quiet. But Namjo was saying something quite different. He was saying that sometimes all you have to do is say no to them. And so I practiced that for a long time. And Talupa is saying the same thing. Empty your mind and think of naught. Is this some teaching that's familiar to any of you, or? Yeah. Yeah. Of course, if your mind is empty, you won't be able to answer that, but yeah. Empty your mind and think of naught. Like a hollow bamboo, rest at ease your body. So a hollow bamboo is a metaphor that if sound it becomes present in a hollow bamboo, the hollow bamboo doesn't do anything, but the sound reverberates, you know, and the hollow bamboo is the space where the sound can bounce off one side and bounce off the other, and it does something. So be like a hollow bamboo means that you are just empty, and anything that arises that happens within you doesn't have anything to do with you, and you don't have to do anything about that. You just rest like a hollow bamboo. And if stuff happens within the bamboo, or stuff doesn't happen within the bamboo, that's not your concern. Like a hollow bamboo, rest at ease your body. So again, you come back to this, you just rest and do nothing. And if stuff happens or stuff doesn't happen, that's not your concern in Mahamudra. Giving not nor taking, put your mind at rest. Mahamudra is like a mind that clings to naught. So he's saying it in several different ways, that you put your mind at rest, you empty your mind, you get rid of thoughts, you simply relax. And once you do that, your body is like a hollow bamboo. Stuff may happen within it or not, but you don't do anything about that. Mahamudra is like a mind that clings to naught. Thus, practicing, in time you will reach Buddhahood. The practice of mantra and the parami, instructions in the sutras and precepts, and teaching from the schools and scriptures will not bring realization of the innate truth. That means Buddhahood. For if the mind, when filled with some desire, should seek a goal, it only hides the light. For if the mind, when filled with some desire, should seek a goal, it only hides the light. So one teaching I received from Osho was on Hui Ning, the sixth or seventh patriarch of Zen. And Hui Ning was not religious, did not study Buddhism or study anything. And one day he was in a marketplace and he heard somebody reciting the Diamond Sutra. And after hearing 4 lines of the Diamond Sutra, he attained full realization. And so Osho's explanation of that was that in a previous life, he had done everything necessary to fully awaken, except give up the desire for awakening. And Osho told me that that happens in about 2% of people, that you do absolutely everything necessary to attain full awakening. But for 98% of people, the desire to awaken goes away on its own shortly before awakening. But in 2% of people, it doesn't. And those 2%, in their next life, the first time they encounter Dharma, they will tend to awaken immediately, because there's no desire in their mind for awakening at that time. They've forgotten about that, but they've done everything necessary to awaken. So he said, so for if the mind, when filled with some desire, should seek a goal, it only hides the light. In Mahamudra, one has to abandon all goals, including enlightenment. That sound easy? So the catch is that if you abandon goals too early, you probably will just stop and you won't carry on with any kind of practice. And if you don't abandon goals too late, then those goals will block your awakening. But for most people, it's not a problem. Abandoning goals happens at the right time. But being without a goal is part of the practice of Mahamudra. I remember many years ago, I had a minor realization of that. And I met somebody who was not in Dharma at all. And they had found out that I spent, at that time, I was meditating about 10 hours a day. And so they asked me the question, uh, what do you get out of it? You know, when you meditate that much, what do you get out of it? And I remember being absolutely stunned by the question because the answer was absolutely nothing. I don't do it to get anything. At that point, it was just part of my being to meditate all the time, but there was absolutely no goal or no. I wasn't doing it to get something. I don't know if that story makes any sense. Probably not, but for if the mind, when filled with some desire, should seek a goal, it only hides the light. One who keeps the tantric precepts yet discriminates betrays the vows of awakening. Most tantric teachings and practices come with particular precepts that if you accept those teachings, you're bound to those precepts. These are different from the precepts, um, uh, the fundamental precepts in Buddhism of not killing, not lying, not stealing, and so on. They're not those precepts at all. I can give you an example. One time I received some tantric teaching from a high master, and at the end of the teaching, and I thought it should have been at the beginning of the teaching, so you can decide whether to do it. But at the end of the teaching, he told us what we were committed to. And one of the precepts that we were committed to for this particular Tantra teaching was that we were forever to regard every other person who received that teaching with us at the same time as like family, and we were committed to helping each other forever. Uh, all of the people who were at that teaching uh, then had that precept of helping each other whenever needed, forever, so tantric precepts can be highly variable depending on uh, what precepts are attached to a particular teaching. And every time I've had tantric precepts, they've always told me about them after I was already committed to them. But I'll eventually get over that, but no hurry. Um, so so he's saying one who keeps the tantric precepts yet discriminates betrays the vows of awakening. So this goes back to not discriminating, not creating duality. Uh, Cease all activity, abandon all desire, let thoughts rise and fall as they will, like the ocean waves. One who never harms the non-abiding, nor the principles of non-distinction upholds the tantric precepts. So basically, when you're doing Mahamudra, not only are you not doing anything, you're not doing it anywhere. Uh, there's the principle of non-abiding, which means that uh, if you're doing it in a cave, you don't think like, oh, I go to this cave to do Mahamudra. You You abandon all concepts of abiding anywhere. One who never harms the non-abiding or the principles of non-distinction upholds the tantric precepts. He who abandons craving and clings to naught, and clings not to this or that, perceives the real meaning given in the scriptures. Well, this goes back to the Four Noble Truths and dependent origination, uh, where craving is the cause of all suffering, and independent origination, craving leads to clinging, and all of that causes all suffering. So he once again is reiterating that you abandon craving and clinging, and cling not to this or that. And if you live like that, then you're in accord with the real meaning in the scriptures. In Mahamudra, all one's sins are burned. In Mahamudra, one is released from the prison of this world. This is the Dharma's supreme torch. Those who disbelieve it are fools who wallow in misery and sorrow. Now, a very important part. To strive for liberation, one should rely on a guru. When your mind receives the guru's blessing, emancipation is at hand. So, when people, when Dharma practitioners try to understand enlightenment, they tend to think of it as something that happens to oneself. You go along in practice, and then something happens, and you awaken. And that doesn't take into account the non-self nature of all conditioned things. So another way of looking at enlightenment is that you receive the master's blessing, and then shortly after that, you awaken. That doesn't fully work either. But if you put all of them together, it might help chip away at any particular views you have of enlightenment. Um, there are many teachings, like there's a Zen teaching, there's a path, but no one walks it. What is the first? There is suffering, but no one suffers. There's a path, but no one walks it. Um, Enlightenment is a non-self occurrence. But since we all have firm attachment to the idea of a self, we think of it as something that's happening or going to happen to ourselves. And so viewing it as uh, a mind-to-mind transmission from another being tends to counteract that wrong view slightly. Uh, there's a story of a student who was living in a monastery or ashram with his master, and the student made quite good progress in his meditation and acquired psychic powers. And at the same monastery, there was a very stupid person, very dull mind, and one day they were working in the garden or the grounds of the monastery, And this student decided to use his psychic power to make fun of this stupid person, and he put an idea in the mind of the stupid person to do something ridiculous. And the stupid person, like polish a rock or something like that, I don't remember what it was. So the stupid person began doing this from this idea that popped in his mind. And the master saw it and came over and said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know. The idea just popped in my mind." And the master realized immediately what had happened, that that idea had been planted by someone. And he looked around and saw the guilty party. And he went over to him and said, "You appear to be quite a dangerous fellow. I will not give you my blessing until 3 days before your death." And then many, many years later, one day that student received the master's blessing and attained awakening and was dead within 3 days. So it's very difficult to, as long as we have views that include the possibility of a being or a self, to fully understand what happens with enlightenment. But in this teaching, he describes it as receiving the Guru's blessing followed by emancipation. To strive for liberation, one should rely on the Guru. When your mind receives the Guru's blessing, emancipation is at hand. So there are some practices like anapanasati, possibly satipatthana, where someone might be able to attain quite a bit of enlightenment without a teacher. I believe I've heard Namgyal say something along those lines, but I don't remember exactly what. But Mahamudra isn't like that. You need a teacher. Many years ago, I received the Mahamudra teaching from Trala Rinpoche. Trala Rinpoche was said to be the incarnation of Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, and had after the time of the Buddha, he had studied with all the great masters, Saraha, Tilopa, all those, and so I was able to attend a retreat where he taught us how to go through all 10 bhumis, which are the 10 stages, after regular enlightenment to get up to Buddhahood. And it became really, really apparent during those teachings that you absolutely needed a guru. Because what happened was there were a number of stages where there was a particular level of attainment, and then you would receive a sign of that attainment. But if you practiced for a long time and you weren't able to attain that, then you would have to go to the guru and get instruction on how to remove whatever was blocking you. And the instructions for how to remove blockages were incredibly variable. There were no two of them the same. One of them was go to your guru and request such and such empowerment, and then do that practice for such and such amount of time. But my favorite one was you're at a certain level of attainment in the higher levels of Mahamudra, but you're blocked. The instruction was leave your cave, go among the people and feed the poor. And it didn't say for how long. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't just lunch, but um, to strive for liberation, one should rely on a guru. When your mind receives the guru's blessing, emancipation is at hand. Now, there's some comments by Talopa. Alas, all things in this world are meaningless. They are but sorrow's seeds. Small teachings lead to acts. One should only follow teachings that are great. To transcend duality is the kingly view. To conquer distractions is the royal practice. The path of no practice is the way of all the Buddhas. One who treads that path reaches Buddhahood. Transient is this world like phantoms and dreams. Substance it has none. Grasp not the world nor your kin. Cut the strings of lust and hatred. Meditate in woods and mountains. If without effort you remain loosely in the natural state, soon Mahamudra you will win and attain the non-attachment. Cut the root of the tree and the leaves will wither. Cut the root of your mind and samsara falls. The light of any lamp dispels in a moment the darkness of long eons. The strong light of the mind in but a flash will burn the veil of ignorance. Whoever clings to mind sees not the truth of what's beyond the mind. Whoever strives to practice Dharma finds not the truth of beyond practice. One should cut cleanly through the root of the mind and stare naked. One should thus break away from all distinctions and remain at ease. One should not give and take, but remain natural, for Mahamudra is beyond all acceptance and rejection. Since the consciousness is not born, no one can obstruct it or soil it. Staying in the unborn realm, all appearances will dissolve into the ultimate Dharma. All self-will and pride will vanish into naught. The supreme understanding transcends all this and that. The supreme action embraces great resourcefulness without attachment. The supreme accomplishment is to realize immanence without hope. So immanence is in this context is spelled differently than the word immanence when something is about to happen. Immanence, it's hard to nail down the precise meaning in Buddhism, but in Christianity, immanence means recognizing the divine in absolutely everything and living in that recognition. So, in Christianity, God is omnipresent, God is everywhere. If you can see God in absolutely everything all the time, that's living in immanence. So in Buddhism, I believe it means to recognize ultimate reality and live constantly in that recognition without any gaps or anything like that. The supreme accomplishment is to realize immanence without hope. Hope can only be present if there's something wrong with the present and you hope for something better to come along that will improve it. In Mahamudra, the present is always absolutely perfect and doesn't need any improvement. Therefore, there's no possibility of hope. There's nothing you could hope for. At first, the yogi feels his mind is tumbling like a waterfall. In mid-course, like the Ganges, it is slow and gentle. In the end, it is a great vast ocean where the lights of child and mother merge in one. Okay, well, since we're almost out of time, I didn't go into great detail with some of those comments toward the end, but I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So that's Tilopa's Song of Mahamudra, his instructions to Naropa, who then went on to practice and master that. And then Naropa became the second lineage holder of what's now the Karmakaji lineage. Tilopa being the first. Naropa then passed it on to Marpa, then to Milarepa, then to Gampopa, then to the first Karmapa, and then on down through the Karmapas and his heart sons up until the present time. Any questions or comments or anything? Jim?
It doesn't sound like you'd get very far with Mahamudra practice if you didn't really have a very strong sense of shamatha already. Is that right? Or does
Yes,
the whole practice get around that?
that's true. So in traditional Mahamudra teaching, you start off with Nundro, the preliminaries, and then you develop shamatha until you have significant attainment. And then you develop the Tibetan form of vipassana until you have significant attainment. And then you receive the pointing out instructions, and then you start the Mahamudra that we described here. So in the traditional way it was taught in Tibet, shamatha.
Oh.
Your microphone is turned off, Lama Sidney.
How did it turn itself off? Wow. Yeah. Did you hear the answer at all or not?
Not the very last part.
So in the traditional way of teaching Mahamudra in Tibet, there are tons of preliminaries before you actually begin the kind of Mahamudra practice we described here. And a significant part of that is shamatha. Hopefully you achieve quite a bit of success in shamatha, so that when you get to the formal Mahamudra practice, that's already part of it. You know?
A sort of follow-up of that. One metaphor for the mind is it's like a mirror, and all the sort of thoughts and perceptions are like the reflections in the mirror. And when you take those away, there's nothing left to like experience of the mind itself. But it sounds like, in this Mahamudra practice, you actually do see something there. Am I getting this wrong?
Well, not exactly. No. In Mahamudra, unlike everything else, you take everything away. You know, Hui Ning, who I mentioned, when he came to the monastery and became a disciple of the previous Zen master, the patriarch of Zen. When the patriarch got close to death, he decided to um, choose his successor. And so they had a contest, and if you wanted to enter the contest, you wrote a poem on reality, about reality. And so everybody expected that the chief disciple of the patriarch would be the one who won and was named as successor. And he wrote a poem something like, the mind is like a mirror, and dust accumulates on the mirror. You have to be diligent and constantly remove the dust, or something like that. And Wei Ning, who was illiterate, came walking down the hall where this poem was painted on the wall, and he asked somebody about it, who read it to him. And Wei Ning said, I can't read or write, could you write my poem? And the guy agreed to it. And Wei Ning basically said, there is no mirror, there is no dust, and took everything away. And so then in the middle of the night, the patriarch gave him his robe and bowl, symbolizing that he was the successor, you know. Uh, so in Mahamudra, you basically take everything away and you don't replace it with anything. And that's very difficult. If your mind still has attachments to name and form, to understanding, to naming, to knowing what's what, um, if you still have those attachments, then it's very uncomfortable to have everything taken away and not replaced by anything. And that is the path of Mahamudra. But you know, there's if that makes you uncomfortable, there's some good news. Mahamudra will not be taught after the age of Shakyamuni Buddha is over. It will not be taught for the rest of this eon. This is it. This is your one chance to practice Mahamudra and attain Buddhahood relatively easily. And if you don't do it this time, there might be ways to attain Buddhahood and so on through the teaching of the future Buddhas, but it won't be through Mahamudra. And if I'm not mistaken, Mahamudra will not be taught in subsequent eons for 30 eons before it's taught again. So by then we should be more comfortable with having everything kicked out from under us, you know. We've all done a lot of anapanasati by then, you know. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. Let's dedicate any merit up to now, and from all sources and times to all beings that each without exception attain the ultimate for themselves.